You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Leanne Brook-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their wildness and actualize their deepest gifts. Talking of which, we completed on the most recent Waking the Wild Feminine and Waking the Wild Masculine just last night. And wow, Jonathan and I have yet again been brought so present to the transformative power of this work. We saw men getting clear on their purpose, women rediscovering their radiance, and so much more. It really is such soul-nourishing work for us to do, which is why I'm delighted to say that we'll be opening up enrollment for the next Waking the Wild Feminine and Masculine very soon. So if you're feeling the call to either of those, if you go along to our Go Deeper page, you can go register your interest now. And that way you'll be one of the first to know when we do open it up for enrollment. The link for that is primalhappiness.co/go deeper. And now on to this week's show. It's with Shannon Major. Shannon is a feminine power relationship coach who is passionately dedicated to supporting women in feeling more safe and desired in their intimate relationship with others and self. Shannon's work focuses on healing the repression of the feminine to awaken humanity's connection to erotic aliveness and spirituality. In this week's show, Shannon and I explored how we can choose into being in relationship in a wild and vulnerable way that allows us to use the relationship as a portal to understanding our gifts and our shadows more deeply, and from there to create the soulful expansion we desire. Really enjoyed this conversation. Shannon really walks her talk and is a wonderful example of the depth that comes from choosing to live and relate in this way. Let's jump in. Hello, Shannon. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And as listeners can hear, fellow Brit. I've had a couple of them recently. Hardly ever get to speak to fellow Brits. And here you go. But
yeah,
how are you?
It's so nice to speak to a Brit.
It really does feel like for you, obviously I'm here already, but I know you're over in Australia. So it must be a kind of like nice sort of sense of home.
Yeah, it really is.
Gorgeous. So I was already really looking forward to speaking to you. And then the topic we're planning to talk about, as we were talking about this idea of choosing into being in relationship, I guess, to the wildness and rawness of relationship, I was like, wow, yeah, there's so much there that I can't wait to dig into this with you. So yes, looking forward to this one.
So juicy.
For sure. So I would just love to know how I've seen you talk about your work, and it is, as I was saying to you when we were just chatting, there's a real realness and rawness and vulnerability and truth with which you speak that I think is quite rare, actually. Even in this world of kind of intimacy, relationship coaching, there's something that, again, that level of vulnerability you bring to it, I think is exceptional. And what's brought you here? What's got you to this point of, I guess, firstly, being able to be in the world in that way, but also has made you passionate about sharing this way of being, whether that be kind of coaching one-to-one, talking about on social media? Like, what's brought you here?
Yeah, relationships and intimacy have been such a huge part of my journey because it's always been what has catalyzed my pain. So it's where I've experienced the most amount of suffering, the most challenge. And in that, it breeds wisdom and passion and curiosity. And it's been a path to spiritual awakening. And that's what my relationships have been for me. Even the ones that, weren't healthy or functional, like they've still led me to some really deep truth that has allowed me to really find myself and know myself. And I think that is so invaluable. And I know that is the truth for all of us. And it's just a case of, how do we look at it? Do we look at it as that relationship ended, so it was a mistake or I got unlucky? Or do we actually really take it to the mirror and really assess and reflect, what's going on here? And when we're in dynamic, I know that the old paradigm way is it's just the wrong person. I'll just get the right one and then it will work out and it'll be fine. And I just realized, how much of it, or in fact, all of it was a hologram to how I was treating myself and what I believed about myself and how that manifested in my relationships. And when we actually harness that and kind of receive the gifts in that, we get to create something really beautiful and soul aligned. And that feels very magical and interesting to me.
Yeah, wow. I love this. And I think it's something that we were talking earlier, that in our culture where we typically approach everything from this very sort of production, linear, how can I be effective? How can I be successful? And then we do that in relationship too. And it really misses that opportunity for more depth, more growth that's possible when we're willing to step out of that kind of, okay, how do I do this perfectly way of being? And sometimes I look at those of us who kind of live our lives in the way that you're describing, kind of recognizing our role, our creative role in all of it. It's almost sometimes a bit masochistic in a way, can't it? Oh, here's another opportunity. What's here for me? And yet it's just I think once you've had a taste of that magic, why would you choose anything else?
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it's kind of fun and liberating in a sense, because if we're on, I don't want to call it unconscious in a bad way, but let's say the path of relationship where we don't look at, our childhood traumas, and we don't look at, okay, how am I co-creating this? By looking at it and having that be part of the journey of the relationship, it feels so empowering to me to know that I have that autonomy to co-create this relationship, and I am creating it all the time. Because the alternative to that is, oh, I'm just unlucky, they're not right, next time will be better. And that to me feels so powerless and boring. It doesn't feel very fruitful at all. And one of the things I'm really learning with my current partner is I could walk away tomorrow and say, no, I'm just going to wait till it's even better because this doesn't have this piece. And it's well, how about I actually get really real and honest about how I can show up in a way that inspires more of what I want? And I think so much of the time it is about that. And we're very quick in this day and age to, swipe left culture, on to the next one. If it doesn't work out, cool, plenty more fish in the sea. And what I see with that is we tend to keep regurgitating and repeating the same cycles because we're still resisting something, which we're still trying to fill a gap and fill a void that actually is just part of life and existence. There is no perfect relationship where everything feels complete and finished. And I think by us striving for that, we're creating this unobtainable expectation of ourselves and our partners and the relationship, and we're really not available to going on the real journey with someone. I definitely see that in this kind of more millennial social media culture anyway.
Yes, just in terms of the sheer access we've got to so many potential partners, like it almost can't help but give people this sense of, oh, well, plenty more fish in the sea, like, but then some, like there is, why on earth would you try and work some stuff out here when I could go here, here and here, not recognizing that you're carrying yourself into each of those relationships. Yeah. I love what you were just saying also about that, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but that sort of the recognizing how we can be very much a kind of victim to our experience and particular relationships, or we can be very much in our sovereignty in our relationships and how we're creating our experience. And it's, again, I think quite a cultural thing, but also maybe just human, that it feels kind of easier sometimes to kind of be a victim to it. And it can initially, I noticed this myself, as much as I've been in this work for so many years, there are times where I notice I've kind of gone back into that, like, oh no, I'm a real victim to this. And it's a real effort to give up the almost like that kind of righteous sense of injustice, wherever it might come, being a victim. Like, it does require that, doesn't it? Like, sit down, like all that kind of privilege that comes from being a victim to it. You have to be willing to say, okay, in me being willing to step out of victim, I also have to step out of being able to blame him, the world, whatever, in order to get the gifts that will come from recognizing my power here. And that's hard. That's challenging.
Yeah. And I love what you said around, by being in the victim, we get that self-righteousness and the power that we get from that. And I really don't think that's wrong. I think that's very human of us. We like to be a bit self-righteous sometimes. We like to have the power. And so the perspective I come from is it's not about saying you shouldn't be a victim, get out of victimhood, that's wrong. It's like, okay, well, what's the subconscious desire in you being a victim? What's the payoff here? Because as long as you're getting a payoff from the existing pattern, you're not going to want to make another choice. You're not going to want to shift. Yes. So it's like if we can actually own and stand in the truth of why we are creating something and why we are choosing something, we can actually receive the kind of eroticism and kink in why we're doing what we're doing. It's like, oh, I get a self-righteousness from this. Like, why not allow yourself to just play in that a bit and enjoy it and actually be in that energy? Because that's why you're choosing this thing, because you enjoy it.
Yes.
Why else would we invest so much energy into these patterns and habits if we did not get some kind of benefit or enjoyment? And we can enjoy things that are sadistic, destructive, unhealthy, because we're dark and light.
Oh, I love that. It's funny, actually. I don't know if you've noticed this, and I'm sure the same thing plays out for me personally as well. Just to say, I just really notice it even more clearly with my clients. There seems to be this resistance in us quite often to look there. So I'll often invite my clients in similar inquiry, kind of like, what is the benefit of you, being the way you're being? Like, what's the payoff there? Because there must, as you say, there is one. You wouldn't be doing it otherwise. And it's so interesting how we naturally want to talk about all of the things wrong with that, all of the costs, and not go to why, like, the benefits we're getting from it. I find that fascinating how I see that show up. It's like, oh no, I can't possibly admit I'm actually getting a benefit from this. But I also agree, like, you wouldn't be doing it otherwise. And how about you actually look at, there is something, actually tangible and valuable in that experience. Doesn't mean you have to stay stuck there, but just to be in like full open-hearted acceptance and experience of that is somewhere that you can make other choices from, if you choose.
Yeah, well, as long as that behavior stays in the shadow and we don't want to look at it and we label it as shameful or wrong, we can't make a different choice. And it's like, well, why not just be honest about it and let yourself receive like the aliveness in it, whether it's power or safety or control, And then you can choose or not if you want to make a new choice, and you don't have to. But as long as that stays in the shadows, hidden and condemned, there's no way you're going to let it go.
Yeah, for sure. How about, I love this. Do you have any examples, either of your own or a kind of a case study from a client where you can make give a tangible example of how this could show up in relationship?
So something that I was journeying with my current partner, and this relationship has activated a lot of old things. And I've had to kind of surrender to the truth that actually I'm way more scared of the man that's fully available and ready to commit than I am of the one that is kind of half in, half out. So that's come up. And so I noticed this aspect of me that was kind of self-sabotaging and resisting it was this really rageful little girl. She was just full of rage. And I had a coaching session about that, and we unpacked it. And what I got to was that there is a real aliveness in that rage for me. So where I may have been playing the good girl or not really speaking my truth or holding boundaries, the payoff is that little girl gets to be in her power and her full expression. Yes, it's destructive. Yes, it's volatile, but there is a real true part of me that enjoys being in that energy. It's really erotic and freeing. Do I want to keep that? Do I want to stay showing up as that? No. But for me to shift, I had to look at, okay, well, where in my life am I not letting myself stand in the real truth of what I'm feeling? Where else am I not letting myself access that aliveness? Because otherwise I'm going to create this shadow bubble where I get to play in that's actually not healthy or constructive.
It's under pressure, so it kind of is volcanic rather than just expressing boundaries or expressing your desires. Yeah. So what in that example, if you don't mind sharing, what have you chosen into creating instead of staying in that kind of, I know it's not constant rageful place, but intimately rageful place?
Yeah. So for me, I noticed that when I hold my boundaries and I allow myself to take enough space for myself, I'm an only child. So I'm very used to my own space. So by me having more space, having more permission to say no, like, no, I'm not available. No, I don't want to do this, has actually simmered it.
Yeah. And seemingly so simple, but I notice that over and over again, how we can't jump straight there. We do need to kind of journey through what's created where we are. And like you say, the choices we're making, the payoff we're making, in order to get to that real seemingly simple realization. Just by, being clear that this is my boundary, this is my wish. It seems almost too simple, but I also get that it isn't as quite as clear and direct and easy as it could sound.
Yeah, well, rage and anger is a byproduct of having our boundaries crossed. So if we don't feel like we have space to make our own choices or have a voice or take up space, then we're by default feeling that our boundary is being crossed, and that creates that volcanic rage in us. So it is so simple, and I feel like it's a massive collective wounding of feeling like in relationships we just have to suck it up and compromise, and that's the nature, and kind of has to look like this, and we have to put it in this box. Whereas well, no, actually maybe I'm someone that I just need a lot of space.
Yeah, I love that. So I think actually that's a really good place to go to next, because I think so many of our kind of relationship kind of kinks and areas of tension do come down to boundaries or lack of them, or lack of them being expressed. I think in some ways they're always there, and it's just whether we're willing to express them or even feel them. And of course, this is another thing that it can sound so simple. All we need to do then is express, this is a boundary for me, or this is what I want. And it's all, but of course, the very action of choosing into doing that can bring up a lot. That can be so intense. And that's a very real example of what we were saying at the beginning of like choosing into the being in the experience of the moment, the intensity of the moment, like speaking out something that in the past we wouldn't have done, and being in the kind of the experience that the impact of that on our partner, and therefore the impact it then has back on us. So I'd love to hear, that's not a direct question, but just a bit more about kind of your experience of that, or as you work with clients of that, because that very much, beautiful sovereign choice, and it also creates a lot more to work with.
Yeah. So what I find is that our boundaries are very wrapped up in our identity. So I'll just speak to the feminine, and it's pretty similar for the masculine, but with the feminine, we have a good girl and a bad girl. And typically the good girl doesn't have boundaries. She's very agreeable. She gives to receive indirectly. She's very compromising, very self-sacrificing. So the payoff of that is, well, I cross my boundaries to be loved. So there's a safety in it. There's a power in it, the power being love. So as long as we want to receive that payoff, we're not going to want to hold boundaries, because it's like an identity collapse. It's collapsing that identity and belief of I'm not loved because of what I give, or I'm not loved because of how agreeable I am, or how generous or comforting or people pleasing I can be. So if we're going to hold boundaries, we really have to collapse that whole identity and payoff system, which isn't actually real, but it feels very real if we've had to survive that way as a child. The nervous system is calibrated to that, which means when it comes to setting boundaries, which is kind of something that's more activated in the lower center of the body, which is our life force, our sexual energy, our eroticism. That means getting in touch with that, and that can feel like a really scary place, because I'm coming into self.
Yes, totally. Yeah. If you have it set up that equals being loved, very hard thing to choose to kind of disrupt something that's allowed you to feel loved. Like that's not a kind of, surface level, oh, I'm not going to be able to, I don't know, have my favorite chocolate truffles. This is like right to the heart of one of our real human and probably soul drivers, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And it goes back to, very, very early years of our life. So the imprint is so deep, especially for the feminine within all beings. There is this, I think it's biological and a social construct of this agreeableness and this, I just want to make people feel good, and I just want to be available, and I just want to be there. So to go against that can, it's tough. It's not easy. It's a practice. And to also have that indication in your body, which again is coming down to those, the lower chakras, to have that connection to, oh, I'm crossing my line right now. Okay, no, this is beyond my line. And that's an in the moment thing. It's boundaries aren't fixed. I think we're taught, or it's implied, that boundaries are this fixed thing that we should know and have a sense of, when actually they're very in the moment. What I'm available for one day might not be what I'm available for tomorrow, or even in 2 hours' time. So it's really just about tuning in and speaking to that and listening.
I really love that you brought that in, because so much of my work with clients is around resensitizing and actually being more in their bodies. And it absolutely goes along with what you're saying, that until we have that level of connection, depth, sensitivity in our bodies, it's not even so much that you're choosing not to hold a boundary. It's that you're not even aware there is a boundary. You can't feel that there is that boundary, as you say, in the moment that's being communicated by your body. So that requires a level of being able to resensitize to those internal no's.
Yeah. Yeah, and having the patience and the willingness to want to listen, because sometimes there is that window and we just like, oh, I just want to say yes, or we just react.
Yes. And so I think I love what you've just said about the fact, again, reminding it is very much in the moment for all sorts of very good reasons. And the way you'll know what it is by listening in. But again, that requires a willingness to listen. And it's not to say that you have to then take action and hold that boundary, but at least you have that choice. If you've been able to hear what that boundary in the moment is, you do then have the choice to do so. So yeah, I think that's fine. Is there anything else you want to say on the good girl part before we go to the bad girl?
Yeah, just that, I know for those of us that are polarized in that side of the coin, so to speak, that, boundaries and power and sovereignty is, extremely difficult and challenging.
Yeah. And had most of your path been on that side of the coin where you've tended to be less boundaried?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've fluctuated at different points in my life from good girl, bad girl. But in relationships, the part of me that seems to be the most active is has been active is the lack of boundaries and the not knowing what I need. I can't tell you what I need because I don't even know.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what I feel. And if you don't have that connection to yourself, like, it's extremely difficult and impossible to healthily relate to someone without losing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, right. Bring the bad girl on. So what would that look like?
So the bad girl, and I'm talking about this in a shadow sense as well. So I'm not saying the bad girl is wrong, but in terms of the shadow and how that shows up, it can be, the woman that's very defensive about her femininity. So maybe like she actually sees a lot of femininity as a bit weak and passive, and she more sees herself as like very independent and I don't need anyone, I can do it myself. And there can be an over emphasis on sexuality and being in her like seductive energy. And that can often be an overcompensation. So it's like, I don't feel powerful, but to the bad girl, power is sexuality. Power is how she's seen.
Yes. And that's definitely been, my work has been that was my default for sure. And, there are times where that still is my default. It's everything you're saying pretty much, yes, for me. And I think this again goes back to those kind of like deep drivers where on the good girl side, why would you risk losing love when that's how you've got it set up that you're going to get it? On the kind of bad girls shadow side, for me, it's very much, this is a very real risk to, I mean, it wouldn't be conscious, but it's a risk to my life. My very survival depends on me having that level of control and defense in place. Why on earth would I choose out of that?
Yeah.
There's a very good reason to hold this the way I have. And this is the thing, these aren't, again, because they're subconscious, it can seem like this isn't real stuff, but like the urge to protect ourselves or to keep receiving love, so strong, overrides pretty much anything.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's tribal, it's ancestral, it's, in our epigenetics. Yeah, it's deep.
Yeah.
And just to speak to the bad girl a bit more, she can be very indulgent in her emotions as well. So she can get really stuck, and in dynamic with men, it can look like, you did this, who do you think you are? This like punishment energy. Like, I'm going to make you pay. I'm either going to withdraw and withhold, or I'm going to scratch your eyes out. Not literally most of the time, but I'm going to swipe you, I'm going to take you down. And it is that control and that addiction to power, and power being through sexuality or power being through emotional control.
Yeah.
So it's like that seductress that's like, I'm going to wrap you around my finger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make you feel so sorry, or I'm going to have you right where I want you.
Yeah. Yeah. All of this is very painfully familiar, but
me too. I've played in both in really big ways.
Yeah. And I think we all have. I think there's probably, I don't know if you'd agree, I think often we'll have almost like a strong suit, but we will play the other hands as well. And that's, there's aspects where I can see, I think for me, I tend to more, and certainly in the past, been more the good girl when it came to other relationships. And then with men, I'd be much more in that bad girl energy. But would you agree that most of us do have a bit of both?
Yeah, I'd say we have a bit of both, and it can be dependent on the situation in our life. But there's probably, for most of us, one that we're a bit more familiar with.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting how, I don't know if you noticed this, it's so helpful to recognize our patterns, recognize the way that they, by their very nature, they're in shadow. We don't even see this is happening. And even when we do the work to start to shine light and see these patterns, it's not going to necessarily, they're not just going to disappear. Like I realized a really big one, it was actually nothing to do with a relationship, like just in the last couple of days, related to a photo shoot I'd had, which I so wasn't expecting. That feeling of, in short, it was like, I've made myself vulnerable and now I could be hurt and then angry with myself for allowing myself to be vulnerable. Like I shouldn't have let that happen. And that's what I find fascinating, the way that even when we think we've got to this level of sovereignty where we're kind of like, yes, I'm really clear on the way these patterns show up and how I hold myself back. And then we notice like, wow, there I go again.
Yeah. I think a lot of that comes down to the nervous system and the fact that the nervous system is still dysregulated. So we're still reacting and responding rather than dropping into the actual truth of what's in our bodies. Because if we actually dropped into our bodies and met the truth of what was triggered in every moment without making meaning about it, without making it wrong, without justifying it or overindulging in it, if we actually just felt the truth with no story, we would transmute things a lot quicker. And especially, self-pleasure isn't my expertise, but introducing things like self-pleasure in those moments as well really recalibrates the nervous system. So that's how we repattern our responses, when we simply respond differently to the moment. And, it takes so much awareness and strength, because I don't know if you have this, but whenever I've been in a big trigger, I will see this window of opportunity, and we don't like to admit this, where I can go, oh, I can respond differently. I could drop it. I could not send that text. I could not say this thing, and I could just come into myself and hold what needs to be held and breathe. Or I can give into, and this is the payoff, right? The compulsion to react.
Yes.
And explode and be in the rageful aliveness of what that gives me. So, we kind of always have a bit of autonomy there, and it's only a slight second usually where we can make that choice. And I feel like the more we can choose I'm coming into myself, I'm breathing with this, then we start to disrupt the patterns, and then we start to recalibrate the nervous system.
And I love what you just said also, which I think links really nicely to this. You were talking about that kind of transmuting that energy, via, for example, self-pleasure. And I think recognizing that energy that's been triggered, that rush of emotion, needs to be moved in some way, needs to be transformed or moved in some way. And that kind of, that default shadowed version is kind of like, okay, I'll just do what I've always done, which could be this instant, shouting and raging. Or I can take this opportunity to recognize, yes, all this energy is whooshed up. That's already happened. And what are other things I could do with it? What's other ways I could allow this to flow through my body, or be breathed out, or, as you say, moved into pleasure, expressed in another way. And I think that's something that we don't actually talk about very much. It's ironic. It's kind of so seemingly simple, but certainly the kind of spiritual teachings that I came through, I don't think there was really that much recognition. You know, when we come from a school of thought, which is very much a kind of recognizing, almost like bypassing or dismissing, like, oh, this is just being created by thought in the moment, as if that's going to somehow like just evaporate it. You know, but you've still got all this that somehow needs to be go somewhere, needs to be moved somehow. So I love that you brought that up. So looking at it from that perspective, what are some other ways that you've noticed, either for yourself or clients, when you have that rush and you have that choice moment, what are some other ways that we can take, other paths we can take?
So one of my favorite things is putting a pillow in front of me, like quite a bulky pillow, for safety reasons, putting two of my hands in a fist and punching the pillow and just going wild, like just letting it all out, going into that real like primal self, breathing from the belly and just punching it out.
Yeah, really like allow it to be expressed, but in a really responsible way. Because again, there is something just really like, there is something quite delicious about the expression, but obviously it's better when it doesn't land on someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And often how we separate ourselves from our emotions and experiences is we have to project it out. So it's like, I feel rage and I'm not willing to hold this rage. I don't want to be with this rage because this rage is wrong. So let me throw it at you. Let me project it at you. And that's, you know, how we stay in these patterns because we're not meeting the feeling with love. So I just want to kind of cycle back around to the good girl, bad girl. Like that is a split as a byproduct of patriarchy. So instead of, women have dark and light and women can be in their sexuality and their life force and their emotion and they can be in their innocence and their love and their compassion. But we've split both of those things and then over exaggerated them, and which has created the shadow. The actual truth of the feminine and of all beings is that we have a life force, a eroticism and a self, and rage and all the emotions, and there is this very gentle, pure, loving part of us. And when we meet the emotions and the sensations and the density with and hold it with that love, that's when we alchemize, and that's when we create safety. So if we're just staying in the emotion and we're not able to hold it and meet it with love, of course we're going to get stuck in it. Of course it's going to feel really uncomfortable. We're going to resist it. We're going to make it wrong. So meeting it with love and bringing the heart into that is how we create that inner union, so to speak, that masculine and feminine.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just thinking, yes, I suppose also the very act of allowing yourself that compassion of, yes, I do feel this rage and that's okay. And, you know, being able to express it by, for example, as you're saying, punch the pillow. There is something very accepting about that, but also it kind of, it stops that needing to put it outside and put, you know, the very fact it's a pillow, not your partner, stops the projection. It kind of keeps it in here, internal, which is, it's much deeper than it looks like. Oh, she's just punching a pillow, but there's actually a lot going on there, isn't there?
Yeah. And like we said, it takes a lot to make that choice because it's very affirming for the ego to want to put it on someone else and to want to make meaning out of it. And when we just take it to the pillow or take it to ourselves, you know, we let go of all identities, all perpetrators, all victims. We obliterate the whole story and the whole drama.
Yeah, I love that. We're the time's flown by, and we're kind of coming up towards the end of the show.
Oh wow!
I know, it's absolutely flown by. What would you like to leave listeners with? If there was, it could either be just that kind of like message you want to leave them with, or just kind of a way that listeners can take this inspiration that you've been talking about, choosing into this kind of wild, aurora way of being in relationship. Like, what could they do next?
I would say that whatever kind of pattern or dynamic you're in, which maybe you feel that you don't like or you want to change, and you feel like it's been quite reoccurring and it feels quite sticky, I would just ask you, if a part of you was enjoying this, why would that be? And whatever answer you get, allow yourself to actually enjoy it and stand in the truth of that. And, you know, what you said around, you know, my honesty and my vulnerability, I think that's why it really speaks to people, because when we stand, you know, in the truth of ourselves, I'm not justifying it, I'm not saying it's right, and I'm also not pitying myself and making it wrong. There's a real liberation in that.
Yes, there is. Yeah. And I think real permission, you know, the more we see people being willing to be alive and real and vulnerable, there is a real permission, like, oh, that's okay, it's safe.
Yeah.
Just.
And I was just going to say, our relationships bring up so many, you know, wild, heavy, dark, you know, young parts of us. And I feel like the more real and honest we can be, the actually more safe and accepting we would feel about that, because there is, you know, a lot of privacy and hiding that happens with couples and relationships, and, you know, it doesn't serve us.
No, so true. Gorgeous. So if people want to find out more about you and your gorgeous work, and you share some amazing things on both Instagram and Facebook, where can they go find you?
So you can go on Instagram, and the handle is @theselflovewitch. Or you can add me on Facebook, Shannon Major, SHANNON MAJOR. And you can add me through there. And I also have a page, The Self Love Witch, too. Yeah, and YouTube as well, The Self Love Witch.
Lovely, prolific. Oh, thank you so much, Shannon. This has been a real pleasure. I've loved this conversation. It has just flown by. It looks at the clock like, wow, where did it go? So testament to how enjoyable it was.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I loved talking about this. And yeah, it felt like we really got to some really interesting truths and points. So yeah, I loved it.
What a beautiful episode. I really loved that. Being in a relationship in a raw, wild way in which we're present to our moment-to-moment experience isn't always the easy option, but it is one that creates one of the deepest, richest portals to growth that there is. The archetypal good girl allows, accepts, and pleases because she believes that's how she'll get love. Whereas the bad girl controls, manipulates, and seduces because she believes that creates safety. Can you see how your patterns play out between the good girl and the bad girl? Recognize the truth of your experience, the way you feel, and the desire that underlies it. What are you getting from this way of being? Perhaps enjoy it and accept it rather than making it wrong or trying to change it. From there, you may well choose to create differently. If you'd like to get the notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes, and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 268. And if you're feeling the call to waking the wild feminine or waking the wild masculine, then go along to our Go Deeper page and register your interest. That way, you'll be one of the first to know as soon as we open it up for enrollment. The spaces are limited and they do get filled up fast, and it sells out. So if you're feeling it's for you, take action now to be sure of your place. The link for that is primalhappiness.co/go deeper. And if you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS app of choice and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get each episode delivered straight to your device as soon as it's released. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.